Hi tubes, got something pretty interesting here for you today. This is kind of going to be a follow-up to my second to last video where I was converting my dash cam from battery version to the capacitor version. And some of you might have noticed if you saw it later on, or if you went back, I ended up having to change the title to "Didn't Work." Because as it turned out, at the end of the video, if you saw that, I had updated the firmware in the camera, or so I had thought, so that it would automatically shut down and save immediately when power was cut to it. But as it turned out, that wasn't the case. The firmware never updated in the video, and so the last file was still getting corrupted. And so to make a long story short, I tried about 10 different firmwares, and none of them worked. A good portion of them did actually load onto the camera, but they still operated in the same manner. If you cut power to the camera, it would just shut off and the last file would be corrupted. And so I kept trying and tried all these different firmwares until finally I got to this point here where if you put power to the camera, it actually doesn't even power on. The blue light comes on, but the camera itself doesn't even power on. So unfortunately, I think this camera is kind of useless now. So I went back and changed the video to, you know, this doesn't work. Interestingly enough, on the forum, this did work for a number of people, but I think the reason that it didn't work for me, and it might not work for others, is because this camera is made by so many different manufacturers. Like this one here, as you can see, is made by Wicked HD, and I just got this brand new one that looks the same, but it's made by Black Box, and there's a whole bunch of different other manufacturers. Some of them don't have names at all, and so there's so many different people making different versions of these cameras with all kinds of different software and firmware and everything. I think that it's just unreliable to be able to successfully convert it to the capacitor version. So what I've gone ahead and done, since this is pretty much just a decoration now, is I've went ahead and I ordered myself a new one, and this is actually a genuine capacitor version, or at least I think it is. I'm going to open it up and make sure. So I figured we'd kind of do our unboxing. This should be pretty much identical to this camera, other than being that it's made by a different manufacturer, or at least has a different manufacturer's name on the front of it, and also that it's the capacitor version. But either way, it's supposedly, the brand name is Black Box, and I picked it up on Amazon. I actually got a really good deal for it. It was like one of those lightning deals that Amazon has, and so I think I ended up paying like $40 or $39 to have it shipped to my door, which is pretty good for a medium quality dash cam. I mean, these aren't the best cameras out there, but I was really happy with this one until the battery died. So that's why I decided, instead of spending money for a higher end one, I'm happy with these, so I just get another one that was a capacitor version. So as you can see, it's pretty much identical to this one. There's really no difference whatsoever. The only difference is on the front of it. It has a slightly different finish. This one has like almost like a greenish blue tint to it. This one's just black, and there's no name on the front of it. But other than that, it looks almost identical. So as I said here, the very first thing I want to do with this before I do anything else is open it up and double check that it is a capacitor version, because that's why I ordered it. There's no sense even setting it up if it's not a capacitor version. There we go. So as you can see here, it is in fact a genuine capacitor version, so that's good, because I have heard stories about these coming and being sold as a capacitor version, but in fact having batteries inside, so that's good. These guys were legit. So our SD card here just gets stuck in this slot here. If you're looking at the back of it, it's on the left-hand side, and the card goes in facing the front of the camera. That's the right way for it to go in. So we'll put that in, and then we got our little power pack here. We'll plug it in. And these things, once you put power to them, they fire up right away and immediately start recording. So what we'll do here is it's recording automatically. We'll hit this button here. This is the record button, and that'll stop our recording here. And then what I want to do is I just want to go into the settings here. You can get to your settings by pressing this M button up here. So you press it once, it takes you into like your video settings. You can set your resolution, your loop. Resolution wise, I always leave it at 1080p. You can go down to 720 if you want, but I always do 1080. Loop recording, that just changes how long the sections that the videos are cut into. I've always done 3. I don't really see any reason to go with one or the other. but 3 is what I've always done. It's the default, so I go with that. WDR is supposed to improve your video quality and whatnot, but I really haven't noticed much of a difference with it on or off, so I just leave that there. I haven't messed with the exposure either. I've seen people online that have done some testing at night and increased the exposure, but it seems like it really doesn't have too much of an effect. Another feature this camera has is motion detection, so you can, if you want to leave this thing on, you can have it so it'll come on, kind of like one of those trail cameras, and start recording if it sees anything, if you want to use it for more of like security or something like that. But I leave that off. I have audio recording on. Some people like to leave that off. I always leave it on. This is the date stamp here. That's just so it puts the date and the time on the camera. I always have that on. And this here is kind of a neat feature. A lot of these cameras have it, including this one, your gravity sensitivity. So what the camera actually has is a built-in G sensor. So what it'll do is if it feels like a real hard shock, and you can adjust the sensitivity of that, I leave it on medium, it'll stop recording. So that way, let's say you got in an accident right there, it'll stop recording, so that way you don't have that file end up getting overwritten. And then if you want, you can put in a license plate number or anything you want, and that'll display on the video too. So that takes care of that setting. And then to get over to the other one, we just press the M button again. That gets us out. We press it once and then press it one more time, and that'll get over here. We can set the date and time. And by the way, to get through these menus, I'm using the arrow buttons here, and then the record button is like your yes button. So if I want to get into date and time, I'll hit the record button, and if I press it again, it'll go through each of these and then go out of it. You can set this thing how often it powers off. I always leave that off. If you want this thing to automatically record after a certain amount of time, of course you have that option. The beep sound, I turn that off. As you can see, it's been beeping this whole video. That gets old real quick. You can change your language. I won't go into that. It's got a bunch of languages. It's got English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, German, Russian, Korean, Japanese, Chinese, pretty much everything you need. This TV mode here is if you ever hook this thing up to a TV. I think in America you use PAL, and the rest of the world they use NTSC, but I've never hooked this up to a TV anyway. But of course you do have that capability if you so desire. The light frequency in the US we use 60 Hertz. The rest of the world, a lot of places they use 50 Hertz. So there's that setting. This is the lamp setting, day mode and night mode. This light on the front here, you can have that thing so that it comes on, but I leave that off. What it actually has is it's got infrared LEDs in here, and this one also has regular LEDs. So if you put it on day mode, it's just the regular LEDs that come on. In night mode, it's the infrared LEDs. So that's kind of neat. And then here you can format your card if you want. We can do that just for demonstrations. You hit format and you go to SD card, hit OK, and then it deletes all the data, formats your SD card. It also has some internal memory, so you can format that as well. Screensaver is a feature I use. I usually put it on 3 minutes, and what that'll do is once this thing is recording, after 3 minutes, the screen will go dark. It'll still be recording, but the screen will go dark, and that's kind of nice for at night. Default settings, that's if you want to return all of your menu settings to defaults. Obviously, we don't need to do that. And then this here just shows you your whatever firmware version you have. And that's it. To get out of here, we just press our menu button again. Another thing here, on this particular camera I thought was kind of interesting. This was the power button on the G1W, but on this one if you press it, it actually turns the light on. So that's kind of interesting. A little bit different. So to shut this thing off, we actually just unplug it. Alright, so here's just a small little preview of how this thing films at various times of the day and different weather conditions. As you can see here, I was going through this little tunnel here, and it adjusts pretty well to the light. You get into the tunnel, it dims down, and then brightens back up as you get out of here. And pretty much the only real big problem you run into is something like this, where you got water or dirt on your windshield. So as soon as you hit your wipers, that pretty much becomes a non-issue, and it clears up. And then there's really no problem at all. You can see here we're going like directly into the sun, and besides the fact that my windshield's dirty, other than that it does pretty good. And you can see that there's really not too much of an issue seeing the traffic lights, even with that sun and that glare shining at you. You can still see the color of the lights from quite a distance from the intersection. Really, the one place where you can kind of have trouble is something like this here in dusk, where you got that bright sky in the background and the ground's kind of getting dark. But even then, it's really not that bad. You can still see them pretty good. And then at night, at least in my opinion, this camera actually does quite well. Even with all the light, in the background and in the foreground and every other thing, you can tell the color of the light's really good. You can see exactly what's going on, all the cars around you, and everything. I mean, considering the cost of the camera, I mean, none of these cameras film that great at night, and so for $40, this one's pretty darn good. And then lastly here, this is just going down a rural dark road, one car oncoming, not really many stoplights or traffic lights or anything, and even here it's pretty solid. So the bottom line here is that if you divide the cameras up into like low, medium, and high cost, with like the medium ones being in like the $30 to $90 range, and anything above that being the high cost cameras, this one's probably your best bang for the buck in the medium range cameras. I mean, it's got all the basic features that they all have. They pretty much all have the same features, but this one seems like it does take the best video of all those cameras, especially if you can get it on sale for this one, $40, something like that. It's really going to be your best bang for the buck. I mean, if you spend the money and you buy one of the more expensive cameras, you're going to get some more useful features and you're going to get better video quality. But if you're not looking to spend a ton of money, or maybe you got to buy a bunch of these or something like that, this camera is going to get the job done for you. That's the bottom line. And of course, I got the capacitor version. I wanted the capacitor version for its advantages. Pretty much the only downside to it is that you can't record video without external power. But I mean, everybody's got cell phones nowadays, so if you really need to record a video, you whip out your cell phone, your camera, something else. So in my opinion, the benefits outweigh the downsides with the capacitor, because you don't have to worry about them overheating, blowing up, or anything like that. They're not going to have problems from constantly discharging and the heat and the cold and all that, which is what caused the battery, my old one, to go. The capacitor will pretty much last you forever. So that's about all I really have to say about this. I'm happy with it. I recommend it. I'll put a link down to it in the description for anybody that wants to check it out, or shop around for others. But that's all I have for this video. So I thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. All right, tubes.